being recorded.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Truth Be Told. This is Dr. Walter Ackah.
Dr. Kyle Dumpert.
And we got a guest coming back. Naomi, what is going on? How you doing?
Good. I'm good. I have the summer classes right now, and I'm actually enjoying it.
You're the only one that seems to be enjoying
Really?
these classes. Yeah,
Enjoying summer
Yeah.
classes. Okay.
Kyle.
I know, it's weird.
She's weird. She's very weird, man. But so today I'm turning over the mic away from me and onto you guys, because Kyle came up with this brilliant idea to interview me because I'm a traveling periodontist, and so he kind of wanted to, torture me for a little bit. So, and Naomi, I felt like she kind of jumped on the bandwagon as well. So she's going to be helping you interview me. So I'm excited and anxious and nervous at the same time. Hopefully I don't say too much to irritate a lot of people. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. So Walter has shared a lot about kind of where he got to where he is, but it's always good to be able to take control of your own destiny, I guess, and not work for somebody else. And this is one of the avenues that you can do that, especially if you're a specialist like Walter is for perio. So this is a great way to maybe look at some options as far as how to be your own boss and how Walter brings the paycheck home.
Yeah.
So like you said, Naomi's going to be joining or co-interviewing with us. So she has a little bit different perspective, still being in school and taking summer classes. And so I'd say let's get started if everybody's ready.
I'm good to go. Let's get it done. So Kyle, we'll start with you.
So with how did you get into being a traveling periodontist? Just give us a brief overview of what a traveling periodontist does versus a traditional brick and mortar setting up shop in one spot.
Right. So basically, I travel to different offices. So I kind of contract out with different offices and say, hey, instead of you sending your patients to a brick and mortar periodontist, I'll just come to you and your patients, and I'll do the work in your office if I can. Okay. So that's basically the gist of it. Is I come to the office and I do the surgeries, I do the consultations, or whatever it may take. And what I do is I partner up with the hygienist. So I have to train the hygienist to really hone in on perio, right? And that is like my biggest avenue is training the hygienists and training the doctors to understand perio. And that's actually the hardest thing to do too. Because I don't think twice about it, right? I see a patient's mouth. The first thing I think of is perio. I go, okay, there's bone loss here. There's this. I don't think restorative like a lot, like I used to, right? Once you're trained in a certain avenue, you kind of focus in on that avenue. Like endo probably thinks about, okay, this needs a root canal. This orthodontist thinks about straight teeth. So I basically focus in on that. And for general dentists, it is the hardest thing for them to do because as a general dentist, you have to kind of look at everything, right? You have to look at occlusion. You have to look at, can this tooth be restored? Does this tooth need to come out? Does this tooth need a root canal? There's so many factors. So having the general dentist focus in on perio and helping me by referring those patients to me is kind of the hardest part of my job, to be honest with you. It's not the surgery.
Right.
It's not... Right. Sometimes it's dealing with patients, but most of the time it's just trying to get the dentist to optimize their office to perio, right? Because I'm coming in as a guest and I'm basically saying, hey, send all these cases to me. And most of the time they would have sent it out, but they wouldn't be focused so much on it. Does that make sense? It's almost like they always send, I know whenever I get a referral outside of another general dentist's office, it's always the worst case scenario. We don't know what to do with you. So go to Dr. Ackah, In this situation, let's be more preventative. Let's talk about what we could do so that we don't get to that worst case scenario. Because every time they come to me, most of the time we're taking teeth out. How about we prevent it by, saying, hey, this is going in this direction. So let's do osteosurgery. Let's do things to kind of keep that teeth, right? Because as we know, keeping the tooth and having that tooth function is the best way to do it. So I basically go into an office. It's kind of like, Kyle, I come to your house and I basically set up shop in a room. And I'm like, from now on, this is my room. I'm going to do everything I possibly can. And your job is to basically try to get people to understand that I'm in this room. So you're going to maybe advertise for me. You're going to help me to get the word out. So that's basically it when it comes to traveling. I have a room or more, one or two rooms, and I am dependent on you guys not only to send me cases, but also to get the word out that, hey, Dr. Ackah is here, so you guys can
Right.
also send cases to him.
Now, feel free to jump in at any point, Naomi. Don't be bashful at all, because I've got tons of questions for Walter. So if
Yeah.
you feel the need to jump in and interrupt at any point.
Right. Be nice to
Yeah,
me,
of course.
Naomi. Be nice.
Well, I do have questions, but
Yeah.
my questions is a little bit in more a student perspective because I'm in the middle of
That-
school where I'm trying
yeah.
to figure out whether I want to specialize or not. So,
Okay.
what was your personal experience choosing your specialty as a to go into periodontist compared to other specialties that was
Right. Uh,
offered in school?
yeah. So to be honest with you, I didn't want to specialize. I know everybody always thinks that I'm crazy when I say that. I absolutely did not want to specialize at all. I love being a general dentist. I love aesthetic cases. I love doing crowns. I love doing veneers. I love extractions. So I really like surgery, but I also like the aesthetic aspect of it. It wasn't until I did my residency at the VA hospital. So the VA was the reason why I actually ended up going perio,
Mhm.
because at the VA hospital I got to do everything. I was doing dentures, hated it, hated it, hated it. I was doing, root canals. I was doing perio surgery. I was doing so many things, and I was like, man, I really found myself enjoying perio. I don't consider doing surgery any harder than waking up and hanging out with my kids. It's fun to me, right? I play my music, I get to do my surgery, and there's nothing that really like overwhelms me about it. And that's when I knew like I really like this. And it was funny, I after I finished my residency at the VA, I worked for Aspen Dental, and I'm sure you guys have all heard of Aspen Dental. It's a big dental chain, and they had dentures, and that's kind of like what they hone in on is a lot of dentures and stuff. The model might have changed, but they mostly were like extractions, dentures, basic restorations, root canals, and stuff like that. And my team, it was funny. They actually would be like, okay, listen, Dr. Ackah is stressed this week. How about this Friday? Let's just put all the surgeries on for him. So basically, they would just be like, okay, he's been irritated, he's been angry all week. Let's put surgery on, because they knew how much I enjoyed surgery. So basically, my Fridays were like, let's just have fun, let's play music, let's do surgery. And that's when I realized, after halfway through, about 6 months into working at Aspen Dental, I was like, nah, I gotta go back. I gotta do surgery. Like, I love this too much. And then people ask me like, oh, well, why didn't you do OS? I don't have the personality to be an oral surgeon. I'll be completely honest with you. I find them to be a little pompous. You know what? Come at me. But it's kind of like they're not MDs, but then they don't want to be DDS or DMDs, right?
Some of them are MDs.
No, you know what I'm talking about, Kyle. They're still dentists. They're still dentists. Let's keep it real. And so that them being in that limbo is kind of, I think, irritates them. So to me, I just didn't want to do that. I personally just didn't have the personality for it. I love my oral surgeons. I have a lot of friends who are oral surgeons. I give them I say the same thing to them. I would never say that behind their back. I actually tell that to their faces. But I found perio to be the best thing for me, right? Because I love trying to keep teeth. I love basically the small nuances of doing gingival grafts and stuff like that. Little things like that made a big difference. The funny thing is, after I doing it for so long, no one even knows. Like, if I do it right, no one will ever know I was even there. And that's my job. It sucks because no one ever knows. like you know what I mean? No one ever says, Dr. Ackah, that implant, amazing. Or Dr. Ackah, that gum surgery you did, wonderful. No one cares.
Yeah.
Right? It's always the general dentist that gets wow, those crowns look great on that implant, or those veneers look wonderful. Mind you, I'm the one that did the crown lengthening to get to that point, but no one cares about me. It's okay. At least I have my surgery. So that was what it was. It was basically, I found a love that I just couldn't, I honestly just could not go past. And I'm not trying to be all faith, like faith based or anything, but it was something that, like, when you're just called, you're called, right? Whenever something just touches your heart and says, this is what I enjoy doing, and it's not hard and it's not tedious, then you have to go for it. You can't fight it. You can't fight it. And I hated dentures. I could fight that. I was like, this sucks. This really, really sucks. And I have a best friend of mine who's a prosthodontist, loves dentures. I will never understand him. But that's the difference, right? Like, surgery to me is like, I could talk about it all day. Kyle and I, we just talked about it yesterday. He had a case with perio. Anybody can call me and talk perio with me. call me and talk dentist. I'm like, all right, I gotta go. I gotta hang up. You know what I mean? So
Now,
that was the reason.
with perio, I look at perio as having two major sections. There's the straight perio patients where you're trying to monitor or deal with the perio disease. And then there's all the other stuff, the implants, the grafting, the aesthetic stuff, the crown lengthening, all of that. Do you like to focus your area on the surgeries versus dealing with chronic periodontitis?
Well, no. So a lot of people do that, right? A lot of people are basically they're periodontists, but they're implantologists, to be honest with you, right?
Right.
Because implants give you the highest return on investment, meaning that in an hour you can make thousands of dollars because it doesn't take long to place an implant, right?
Right.
To bone graft and so forth. And so a lot of people focus their attention on that. Actually, my favorite surgery is osseous surgery. It's when a patient has 5, 6, 7 millimeter pockets, bone defects. When I'm in there and I'm actually cleaning out that defect and filling that defect up so that we can level the bone up. That's what I like to do. I like to work with the teeth. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I personally, I like implants, and implants are great, but to me, implants are just last option. I'd rather do everything else but to place an implant. There's some times where I can't help it. I have to place an implant, but I'd rather do everything else. So for me, and I think this is from the way I was educated and taught. I am old school perio. I'm old school. Like I want to do everything I can to keep a tooth, right? And sometimes
Right.
it may not look pretty. I know that because once we do the surgery, you may have some recession, you may have some spaces between your teeth, and I let the patients know that. But then I just turn to someone like Dr. Dumper, and I'm like, hey Kyle, can we get some veneers in here? Can we get some crowns in here to kind of offset the surgery I just did? So from an aesthetic point
Right.
of view, because we're the Instagram generation, right? No one wants to keep a tooth if it's going to look ugly. They'd rather take it out.
Right.
So we're
Yep.
basically working. I'm going against that, right? Old school perio is let's just make sure this tooth stays. New school perio is let's make sure it stays, but still looks pretty. So I'm in that avenue right now. So did I answer your question?
That did. That did.
Okay.
I have follow-ups, but feel free to jump in, Naomi.
Yeah, I know it was interesting to listen because right now we just finished doing crown preps and veneers in school, and yeah, but I think what so you talked about how traveling as a periodontist and what's your lifestyles like? How you can I know like you said you go and traveling to clinics.
Yeah.
What's is that more time is it time more consuming because you're driving around or versus you're staying in one place and that patient coming to you?
Right. It is very much more time consuming, to be honest with you. And it's harder because of the fact that I go to different offices. I have to deal with different personalities, different situations, different patients. If I'm in one area and people are coming to me, I can only really reach out to a certain diameter, right? A certain radius, right? Radius is a better word, a certain radius, right? So I will see kind of the same amount of people, the same kind of people. But when I'm traveling from one end of Houston to another end of Houston, I get a gambit of people, right? And so having to deal with that is probably the hardest, and trying to organize that is the hardest for me. Traveling, I mean, Houston drivers are notoriously bad at driving. Like really, really bad at driving. God, don't let it rain. You would have thought that the world was coming to an end. But so that's another avenue, right? I'm dealing with traffic. I'm dealing with trying to make sure that the office has all my stuff, right? So when I go to an office, what I do is I contract out and I say, hey, things that I cannot carry around too easily, implants, bone, membrane, stuff like that I can't carry around too easily, sutures, we'll keep in your office. Now, the problem is, I hope that when I use the material, guess what? It gets replenished. That's the hardest part. So I always go in there with a question mark. Am I going to have all my stuff ready to go? And that involves a lot of just getting on the on the office and having great people that are already in the office make sure that I have my stuff. The lead assistants or the assistants in general. Does that make sense? So working with them, having a great relationship with the assistants to make sure, hey, Dr. Ackah is coming. Let's make sure he has everything that he needs. That's the key. Because I've gone to an office and I'm ready to place an implant and I look and I'm like, okay, we don't have that size. And then I'm closing up. That
Yeah.
sucks because that patient already prepared themselves for something. And guess what? Patients will never look at the office and say, man, they screwed up. They look at me and say, man, you screwed up.
Yeah.
So it's my name, right? So another thing that I guess I can complain about is I'm tied to the office, good or bad, right? So I try my best to make sure that the office, at least while I'm there, is functioning as best as possible. Do I always succeed? No, not even close, right? But I try my best. So your name is associated with that office. They don't think, I don't know, ABC Smile Dental and Dr. Ackah. They think Dr. Ackah is ABC Smile Dental. I'm there with
Right.
them. And in actuality, I'm very separate. I'm an independent contractor, so I'm very separate. And they let people know that. It's funniest thing. If anything goes wrong, oh, I'm an independent contractor. If everything is perfect, oh, we're working together.
Yeah.
you know, so it's amazing to me whenever blame is to be pointed. Oh, he's an independent contractor. You got to deal with him. But let everything be beautiful. Patients are like, oh man, this was the best. Da, da, da. Oh, make sure you review our office. Because you came to our office. So that's something that you have to deal with. Is like you said, traveling, making sure that you have your materials, making sure that when you go there, the patients understand what to expect. I have tons of paperwork when it comes to consent, making sure the consent forms are done correctly, right? Because I'm coming in hoping that everything's prepped ahead of time. So as you can see, you see how much I'm dependent on offices to do their part, right? If I'm a standalone in my own brick and mortar, my team knows they have to do everything. I don't have to sit there and check on them because guess what? We've done the same thing over and over again, right? But these offices, those people that are in there are working with the general dentist. I'm only coming in there once, twice, maybe 3 times a month. So for those 3 times, that's the only time they deal with perio. The other time is either let's just get ready for perio or we're only focusing on general dentistry. Does that make sense? So it is really, I mean, it's hard. It's hard in the sense that like it's a big ramp up. And if that person that I'm used to connecting with quits, it's basically starting all over again. It's basically starting all over again. Talking to the office manager, getting the right person to treatment plan. You guys can ask me about treatment planning, but that's also very difficult because they're not used to treatment planning the way perio. Because we have maybe like a 20 codes that we use, really, if not a little plus or minus, but it's very different from general dentistry. General dentistry may have, God, Kyle, like 100, 200 different codes that you can use, right? For me, I'm very limited on the codes that I use, but it's repetitive, but it's also very important because most of the time my codes are more expensive. Right. So you can, yeah, good or bad. Sometimes some people don't agree with that, but yeah, like it's more expensive. So you have to also change the mindset of the people in the office to realize that $2,000 for an implant is not a big deal. But they'll look at it and go, "Oh my God, how am I going to tell that patient that they need to pay this?" I'm like, just do it.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I go to an Apple store, they don't go, "Whoa, $1,200 for a phone that you're going to buy another one in 3 years." They don't tell me that. They go $1,200, period. You see? Yeah. But for some reason, exactly. For some reason in dentistry, we go, "What? $1,000 for a crown? You mean the crown is going to last you 10 years? You mean that crown that is cheaper than your iPhone that you're going to replace in 2 months, in 2 years?" But for some reason, we are our own worst enemy when it comes to that. And it's even now, it's even more emphasized when I go to an office that's not used to those prices. And then I come and tell them a patient has to pay, $4,000 for this treatment. They're like, "What?" I'm like, yeah. I don't blink. I don't think twice about it, but they might. So then I'm basically coming in hoping that they're trained enough to be okay with that so they can explain properly to patients, right? Does that make sense?
So how do you pick an office that you want to start working with, and follow up, how many offices do you work with that you're comfortable time-wise for keeping your schedule busy and not feeling overwhelmed?
Oh man, great question. So so my life was before my kids and after my kids. So I say that for a reason. So before my kids, all I wanted to do was just work in as many offices as possible. I was working like 6 days a week. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not fun. No one should ever do that. That's nuts. But I was working 6 days a week and I had, God, I think like 15, 16 offices. Right.
Wow.
And it was basically going in there. Some offices I was going in twice a month, other offices once a month, whatever. But it was a lot of offices because I just wanted to just make as much money and then get everything going.
Right.
My kids come. I've paid off a good amount of my student loans paid off. I don't have much, right? So then you start to think what's more important. So then I started coming back, and I think I'm at 8 now. You see, I cut back in half. And in all honesty, like I love the office I'm at right now because they're also my friends, right? The general dentists have become friends with me, and we can hang out and be honest with each other. How do I add an office? How do I choose an office? I literally just go and say, hey, what does it look like? How many perio cases are you referring? Right? Look for those offices that say aesthetic dentist. Look for those offices that say implant dentistry, because they're the ones that know and understand perio really well. Because they're the ones like that are gonna basically say, I don't want to do this case. Let me give it to Dr. Ackah. I don't want to do this ridge that's this small. Let me have him build it up. You see, so those are the ones that you pick. If I were to go, I know Kyle's educational background, so I can use him as an example. I know Kyle can place implants, okay? But I would work with him because I know his eye is focused on implants, focused on crown lengthening, focused on osseous, right? Because he had to deal with that. The more the general dentist learns, the better referrals they become. Some people go, as a specialist, you never want the general dentist to do implants. I'm like, that's stupid. Because if they don't know what you're doing, they can't refer to you. Right? So even if they say, I don't want to do implants, but I took implant classes and stuff, I'm like, great. You're the perfect person to work with. If they say, I know nothing that you do back there in my office, that's a problem. Because they are not looking for any perio. They're not looking for anything but whatever they want, they know, which is usually crowns and veneers and so forth.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
Did I answer that?
That was a great answer. Great answer.
I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay so
You're
far.
doing all right. Yeah.
Naomi, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, just so did you have any experience that, like you mentioned that you have to have all the equipment when you go to those clinic, and I think when time goes by and you work for the same place for a long time, like I think you get used to it. But if you start working on a clinic where all the equipment were not there, and do you have ever had any experience that you have to improvise at the spot?
Okay, dentistry is about improvisation. I mean, that's a given, right?
Yeah.
But I actually bring a lot of my own stuff. I bring my own implant machine. I bring my own luxators. They're elevators to take teeth out. So I bring a lot of my equipment, but I have the office buy a lot of the stuff that I don't want to carry around, like bone, right? Anything that's a little fragile, I basically have them buy. So your contract looks like this. You can say, hey, I'll do everything for you, but I'm going to take a higher percentage, 60, 70%, right? And the office just gets 30%, kind of like a rental fee in a way, right? Or you can say, hey, how about you buy the bone, you buy the implants, you buy this, and then I'll take less percentage, right, off of the production that we do. So let's just say you do $1,000 and the office was buying the implants and everything. Maybe the office might say, okay, I get 50%, you get 50%, because you have to account for their overhead. Does that make sense? So it's only fair. And that's the one thing that people try to do as specialists sometimes, is they go in there and say, okay, here, everybody, you buy this, buy this, buy that, but I still get 60%. How is that fair? Everybody has to benefit somehow. Does that make sense? So that's one of the things that you have to kind of explain is you can't be selfish, you can't be greedy. Because if you're selfish and greedy, I promise you the relationship will not work. There's a lot of general dentists that think without me, you don't exist. And there's a lot of specialists that think without me, you don't exist. That is the dumbest thing I've ever had to deal with. And I've left offices with that mentality because I was like, I don't have time for this crap. You know what I mean? Like, you're helping me because let's be real. If without me, you couldn't do this. And I couldn't exist without your referrals. So get our egos out of the equation and let's just work together. You see what I mean? So, but for me, I wish I could actually carry you guys to my storage area in my house, because I have two basically like big like they look like toolboxes in a way. Like I wheel around 2 big toolboxes that have my implant in there, that have all my tools and everything that I need. And then, like I said, the office has all the other stuff that I just don't want to carry around, or just don't feel like carrying around. So like every day I go to an office, I'm carrying around these big toolboxes full of stuff that I need. Does that make sense?
So you do have like a contract at first, so you have an idea
Absolutely.
what item. Okay.
Everything. If you know what, if I could, I would have a contract with Kyle that he can go on vacation if I don't go on vacation. We have an agreement, right? Kyle and I, we love this podcast, so we do this for fun, right? But anytime money is involved, you have to have a contract. And it's very simple. I bet you could probably go online and get a contract put together that says, I do this, I'm responsible for this, this, and this, or just get a lawyer. Just get a lawyer to write a contract initially, and then just use the same thing for every office. Just change the name of who the two entities are. That's it. Yeah.
And that is just to protect both people. So everybody is on the same page. Everything is spelled out. What do we do in this situation? Let's look at the contract. We talked about this. We agreed on this. There's no way anybody can get upset about this because we covered all our bases up front.
That's it. And the funny thing is too, and as an independent contractor, you are basically, the word is there, independent, right? You're doing things for yourself. You are just literally honing in. So if you treat a patient, even though that patient is associated with the office, they're kind of also your patient. Does that make sense? So anything happens, the patient can come to you and not the office. They're going to come to you directly because it's your license, right? And if they have a complaint, they'll go directly to the board for you, not the office. The office has nothing to do with it. You're just basically, renting a space. But the funny thing is, as an independent contractor, no office can tell me what to do. They can tell me how to really set my fees. They can make suggestions, but they can't tell me how to set my fees. My fees are my fees. You see, when I work is when I work. It's also great from a tax point of view because I basically get the same tax breaks, right? If I travel, I fill my gas, that's a tax write-off because I'm traveling for work, right?
Yep.
My car, I could go lease a car, rent a car, buy a car. I don't care. And I can write that off because it's for work, right? And I don't want to go into the minutia of taxes because I'm very bad at it. That's why I hire somebody to do all these things. But I know enough to know to be dangerous, you know what I mean? To like say I can benefit more if I'm a 1099 independent contractor with a limited liability or an S corp under my name. So it's not under my name, it's under my business name. Does that make sense? So your contract has to be under your business name, not your personal name. You never want it to be your personal name. You can be a co-signer, but the contract needs to be with Dr. Ackah LLC and ABC Dental LLC. Does that make sense? You're contracted to each other based on that. Make sense? Cool.
Let's talk about everybody's favorite, or every dentist's favorite topic, dental insurance.
I knew it. He is so obsessed.
So explain the complexities of dental insurance being an independent contractor, because you have to contract with every office that you're at, correct?
Every single office. I have to make sure that the insurance knows I'm at this office and I'm working at this office and this office is getting these fees. Because
even though you're an independent contractor and it's just you, that one contract doesn't matter.
It doesn't go with me. Every office, every location, every address is a very different entity to insurance companies, right? That's how they deal with it. They don't say, oh, Dr. Ackah, oh, you're over here? Okay, cool. Because don't forget, within the same, 20-mile radius, you might have two different, fees for insurance, right? So every single, I literally have to be contracted every single office that I have. And if I have 8 offices, I have 8 different contracts, affiliation with the insurance companies.
With that one insurance company.
And within that one insurance company, there's a whole umbrella. It literally, it's like a pyramid scheme. And I know Kyle's gonna
It really
appreciate that.
is.
It's like the top, and then okay, Delta Dental, and then within Delta Dental is Delta Dental of Wisconsin, and this and that. They just keep breaking themselves down to down, and then after a while, you just get so lost in what Delta Dental you're dealing with. You just go, I don't know if I'm. Just call your insurance and find out if I'm contracted out with them. You know what I mean? And or you'll basically run the insurance, call the insurance, and you'll realize that there's a case. Let's just say you're doing an extraction and they're only going to pay you like $50. I don't care how many times I'm insured, contracted out with you insurance. I'm not doing those because my cost to buy the bone graft and membrane are more expensive than what you're actually paying me back. So that's
Right.
another thing, right? So you have to keep track of every single office. So maybe one office, ABC Dental, I may say, you know what, I'm not accepting Delta Dental, and I keep using Delta Dental, but I'm not trying to pick on them. I hate all insurances.
You can pick on them. We all hate them.
Here it might be good, right? But here at XYZ Dental, it may suck. And it's the same exact insurance company, but it's just for some reason it's very different, right? And so, you have to look at that. Every patient needs to be looked at very independently. Some cases, some stuff might be covered by this insurance, but some stuff might not be. The missing tooth clause, Kyle, I love that one, right? Basically, if a tooth has been missing, you may or may not get your implant covered, right? It's so ridiculous to me. It makes no sense. What does it matter that the tooth was missing before or after if I did the extraction or if somebody else did the extraction? There's a hole here, and the patient wants the hole to be filled. But for them, they're like, well,
paying their insurance premium,
and the patient's paying their insurance premium. So there's so many things that you have to deal when it comes to insurance, and it's not any better. It's not fun. No one likes dealing with insurance, and as a periodontist and as a traveling periodontist, honestly, it's even worse because I have so many different insurances that I have to take care of. And then there are people that will say, hey, we can get you a higher premium on your insurance if you work with us, and there those companies, Kyle, that will basically try to negotiate your fees for them.
Right.
But what they do is so funny. They negotiate per location as well. So it's not like they say, hey, Dr. Ackah, we'll charge you $5,000 and we'll do all your insurances. That's not the case. They say $5,000 is for just that one office. So even if they're negotiating for me, it's literally for just that one office. And then sometimes that by 8, and I'm paying $40,000 just to make sure. Hopefully, I get a little bump in my fees that I'm charging. So I personally hope that I actually work better with patients that insurance is not going to cover a case. Then I'm like, hey, let me give you a little discount here and there. Then it's a little easier, to be honest with you, because insurance is not involved at all. Then I might like, hey, go ahead.
And to be honest, most people's insurances max out at $1,500 of benefit per year. So they're really, if they're having a $4,000, $6,000 case, there's not a lot of extra benefit there for the patient.
Right. But don't forget,
it's going into that value.
Right. And don't forget, too, some insurances will limit me on what I can charge, right? They'll say you can only charge a certain amount. So that's another way to say that we're benefiting our clients or whatever it may be. Right. But yeah, it's this whole thing is a mess. It's a mess. I know Kyle and I, we just, we talked about how we wish we could just go fee for service and stuff like that, but not everybody can do that, right? Because we're all dealing with, we're kind of all fighting each other. Instead of fighting together against insurance, we're fighting each other. And I actually wish if any insurance company or any rep for insurance companies listening, please come on. I really have questions for you. I know Kyle does, and maybe I can mute Kyle so that he doesn't act crazy. But we definitely have to get you guys on to explain what's going on, because I feel like you're more profitable every year, but yet the patients are getting less every year. But that's another story for another. Did I answer that question?
I'm restraining myself so much from diving down this rabbit hole. So let's move on past insurance, unless Naomi has anything else, other questions about insurance.
Actually, I was thinking about a question related to insurance.
Please.
Feel free. Go.
Yeah. Obviously don't have any experience dealing with the insurance in dental field, but I do have some experience dealing with insurance in medical equipment company where I used to work previously before dental school.
Okay.
And I think I don't know whether it's the same case for dentistry, but dealing with co-payments with patients how difficult that is, because I know some patient, like I was one of those patients in the past. I would be hesitant to pay copayment. I would beg for discounts, and it would kind of annoy the doctor and the office. But how do you deal with those kind of situation where when patient is asking for sort of like a discount that they can afford to pay the copayment? Because copayment is pretty big in dental insurance.
Um, yeah. A copay is a copay,
One,
right? Go ahead.
you have to pay a copay. So legally, that you have to pay it. If you don't charge the copay and you don't tell the insurance company, that's insurance fraud. So legally, you have to tell the patient, this is your portion. You're contracted just like I am. So you have to do that. But I'll let Walter go into how he goes about getting it, because his copays are a lot bigger than my copays.
No, but that's exactly right. You have to pay it. The way you can actually kind of help patients is to do like a care credit, right? Is to kind of say, hey, we have our own in-house, I don't want to call it insurance fee, but like a financing, right? And that's the best way to do it. It's basically say we have an in-house financing that will give you a discount on our total treatment plan. And you say a copay is a copay. You have to pay it. You can't get around that at all. But the hardest thing for us is collections. It's
yeah,
the copay
I think
part.
that's what I was trying to ask.
Collection is the
part,
hardest part. It's the hardest part because I mean, Kyle, I think you had a beautiful rant a few months ago about a patient that he was dealing with collections. But the collections are the hardest part, especially for me, because of how expensive everything is, right? 90% of people are going to pay because they're just good people. But there are other people that literally will come in, put the money down, do the one part, and just you're fighting them, you're sending them to collections, you're doing all this stuff just to collect the other half. You see, so here's another thing that you could do as an independent contractor. You can just go to the dental office and say, hey, our contract is for what I produce and what I produce only. It's not what you guys collect. So you can say, hey, I don't care about your collection. You're paying me for what I did, right? A lot of dentists will probably never go for that. I don't know, Kyle. Would you ever go for that? Like, I feel like most dentists are not going to say, well, you benefit and I might lose out. You know what I mean? So that might not be, something, but you can always just put it that way. You can say, hey, listen, it's what I produce. So let's just say I produce 2,000 and I get 50% of that. You're paying me $1,000. I don't care if the patient never pays. I'm getting that 1,000. I'm going home. Right. Another thing you could do is, if the office is really good with collection and their collection rate is like 99%, then you can say it's based on the collection, right? And because that the office is so good that you're going to get paid no matter what. You might miss out on 1% here or there, but that's not overly dramatic, right? So then the office feels like, oh, we're benefiting, you're benefiting. It's not just, hey, screw you guys. If the patient never pays, it is what it is. You see what I'm saying? Right. So that's usually the one that works the best, is kind of like, hey, collection, let's really do a good job on collection. But there are other dentists and other independent contractors that are like, I don't want to deal with that. Just pay me at the end of my day and I'm gone. Whatever happens with the patient. Does that make sense? Right. Yeah. So collections are
honestly, I think that's the easier way, is paying you at the end of the day. We have an understanding historically, my office collects 98% of accounts receivable of stuff that's due. So we have a good understanding of how much we're expecting to get. For Walter to keep track of, I'm owed this much from this procedure for this day from 3 months ago from this office, and keeping track of all of that can get, I'm assuming, pretty overwhelming, because as an associate, I kept track of that when I worked for somebody else. This is what I produced. This is how much I've got paid. And I'd go back through my day sheets and cross things off as I got paid by the insurance company for it. But if you're working at 8 different offices where you don't have access to those records all the time, there's a high level of trust that you have to have with the business owner of that operation. Beautiful. And I think it's easier, especially with a specialist, when a lot of those fees are coming out of pocket for the patient. It, one, gives the incentive for the office to get paid. 2, it makes it easier saying, I took care of Walter. I don't have to track his stuff. I don't have to separate that out every 2 weeks or every month or whatever the agreement is. I'm just going to pay him at the end of the day, write him a check. He's an independent contractor. He's going to deal with the taxes and everything on his own. So I don't have to worry about payroll tax, Social Security tax, FICA tax, things like that. He takes care of that. This is what he produced. I'll pay you his percent at the end of the day. And then the understanding has to be there if there's insurance narratives or things like that are things are getting denied. We expect Walter to help us write these narratives and help fight for whatever we're not getting paid for through the insurance companies.
I never thought I would ever say this, but Kyle's 100% correct. That was beautiful. I have no word. Mic drop. That's exactly, and that's exactly why somebody like Kyle I would work with, because he basically understands in the end, let me just run my business. He did me a service by coming in to my office. And that goes for any specialist or anybody, right? Even if you hire somebody as a temp, right? Pay them so they don't have to worry about them, then they actually want to come back to your office. They want to work harder for you because they know that you're not going to screw them over and there's no animosity, tension, or anything. And I mean, Kyle, honestly, you said it perfectly.
There's risk on any business, both on Walter's end and on the office's end that he's coming into. So mitigating that risk and finding the easiest route to make things as simple as possible helps to eliminate a lot of that risk. And, if you're showing trust on each end, that makes for a better partnership moving forward.
And don't forget, I mean, it doesn't have to be that end of the day. It could be like at the end of the month, it doesn't have.
Right.
But one thing that you have to understand too is, if I'm coming in as an independent contractor, I'm taking on all the risk, right? Because if I do surgery, I'm the one that did the surgery. The office did, and I did. So I'm taking on all the risk. So at least one thing you could do is be like, hey, let me handle this part. You did your work, you did your part. Let me just pay you so you can leave. Okay.
Right.
So that's a discussion to have, but beautifully spoken, beautifully said. I mean, did I answer
risk
for me? Yeah.
Well, let's do risk again, because if you're only in the office one day a week or one day every 2 weeks, the office is dealing with your post office.
Yes and no. Not for me. Okay. So for me, what I did was I actually set up a Google number, and you could easily do this, everybody. Okay, you set up a Google number. Heck, Naomi, you can even do this with your patients once you start seeing patients. Set up a Google. Do not give them your real number. Never. Okay, advice. Set up, because we had pagers. I don't even know if pagers exist anymore, but we had pagers in dental school.
We did, yep.
So they could page us, but don't give them your real number. Go to Google, set up your number, and what happens is when they call that number, it comes straight to your phone. So basically, they don't know any different, right? And I mean, I guess they do now if they're listening. But you have my Google number. You don't have my personal number. I'll never give you my personal number. But they can still contact me. They can still text me. They can reach out. And I actually have my post-op instruction paper, and I wish I had this with me right now. That literally has my number at the bottom, and it's a local number, so it's not like, oh, where am I calling? It's a 713 number, local to Houston, so that they can call me anytime they have any issues. And my patients are so good, man. Like, I have a lot of respect for my patients, most of my patients, not all of them. But they'll only call you when they're like, I have no clue what to do. And that's exactly what I want. I want people to call me. I want them to feel comfortable. And I tell them, hey, call me if you need anything. Some people will call, just be like, hey, is this normal? Some people will call and be like, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm like, you just had surgery yesterday. Relax. You know what I mean? So it's like you get both ends of the spectrum, but in the end, I try to do as much of my own post-ops as possible. I try to deal with my patients as much as on my own as possible. I tell the offices, just let them call me. I'll take care of it. And 80%, we'll say 70 to 80%, it's usually very basic. Like, okay, I'm in pain. Yep, just had surgery. Or just talking people down. The other 30 is, I need to see you as soon as possible. That's when they can come to an office within the 8, they can come to the office the next day or whenever, so I can see them. Or if the general dentist is really good and comfortable, they could be like, hey, let me see them. They take pictures. I look at it and say, okay, do this, this, and this, or get them on my schedule for this, this, and this. Does that make sense? So it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of, let me just handle it. And like I said, most of my patients is very basic stuff. It's very basic. Let me just talk you off the ledge kind of stuff. Really simple. And on top of that, to be honest with you, for as long as I've been working now, I'm very conservative. I don't push the limit like I could or want to. I keep it very simple. If the implant doesn't look like it's going in well, we're not placing that implant. If I take a tooth out and I can't do an immediate implant placement, I'm not doing it because I just don't want to have to tilted towards the, oh my god, this is a bad situation. I want everybody to be like, this was easy, it healed well and everything, you know what I mean? So I'm more conservative than maybe if I had a brick and mortar where I could be like, guns blazing and then patients are coming back and all this other stuff, you know what I mean?
Right.
And don't forget, if I'm working with Kyle again, or you, Naomi, in a few years, and let's just say that you keep seeing a lot of my patients coming back for post-op issues, what would you think? I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to work with him. So you also have to kind of have your name on the line too, and say like, is this worth it for me to be, what do they call that, a cowboy? You know what I mean? Like, there's no point. Sometimes I just have to be simple. Follow some rules that I have. Like with me, you heal for 4 months after I place your implant. Some people do 3 months. Some people do 2 months. I don't. I do 4 months because I found that that's the best way. Give it enough time. Let the soft tissue heal. Let the bone and everything really mature. In the literature, it says 3 months. I go 4. I just give it an extra month. It's not a big deal to me. I have yet to, my failure rates are very low, thank God. So it's kind of like you set your own precedence on what you're doing. Does that make sense? But I'm very conservative in that sense.
Naomi, anything?
Yeah. We'll wrap up here soon too, by the way. I guess I'm still in control.
It has been very educational because I'm listening to these experiences, and I think you already mentioned this, that I think I was gonna ask you about the emergency, if patient have a real emergency, like surgery infection or post-op infection, then how do you deal with it? But you sort of answered that questions already.
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, if it's really bad, I tell them to go to the ER. I literally, that's go to the ER. If it's really bad, hey, Dr. Ackah, I can't see this, or it's really swollen, whatever, go to the ER. They know that. Go to the ER. If it's really bad infection, the ER will kind of help me on that, right? But if it's something that they're like, no, I can wait. Okay, let me see you tomorrow. Let me see you at this office. Let me see you here. Does that make sense? And if I say, hey, let me see you at this office, and they're like, it's okay, I don't need to come, then I know it's not an emergency. It's them hyping everything up. Does that make sense? If it's a true emergency, they will make sure that, I don't care if they have to go from one end of Houston to another, they'll come. Those patients will come. But if it's more like, I just want to just talk to somebody, or I just need more pain medication, whatever, they're not going to come if you put them at the other end of Houston. They'll be like, it's not worth it. Does that make sense? So you can also kind of, look at stuff like that. But emergencies, first thing you always got to say is, and that goes with anybody, if you have a brick and mortar or if you're traveling like I do, you always tell everybody, if it gets really bad, go to the emergency room, please. Any surgery, go to emergency room. We can see you, but if it's like in the middle of the night and I can't get to you, go to emergency room, please. You see, the best thing to do is basically take care of the patient first. And we talked about getting sued and stuff like that. Most of the time, if you just treat people with respect, that's so minute. Like, I don't think that's what we need to focus on. I think we just need to focus on being good to people, right? What would you do if you were, if it was your mom, dad, whoever? Go to the emergency room. Let me take care of you later, So.
And knowing your patients before you do the surgery, you know their medications they're on, you know their health history, you know what to warn that patient. This might happen. Communicating that to them, they're a lot more understanding of that. Okay, Dr. Ackah told me, he was into my sinus. I might have some bruising on my face afterward. Or when you don't tell them those things, which that just happened to me. I took a tooth out on a lady and it broke through into the sinus, and she comes in the next day, my face is bruised. I was like, that's on me. I forgot to mention you might get some bruising. But again, you communicate those things to the patients. And if it's something that is a serious emergency, like Walter said, if you're on blood thinners and we didn't stop them, if you're going to have problems, can't get the bleeding to stop, you might, in the event that happens, go to the emergency room, because they'll stabilize that patient, and then they can come back in to see you after that major issue is taken care of.
That's it. So I'm gonna cut it short here because it is the holidays, and I want you guys to go enjoy yourself. But we're gonna stop it here. Do you have any last questions for me? And then I'm gonna take charge again.
I'm good for now, Naomi.
Yeah, I'm good too.
Okay. All right. Cool. We're gonna go ahead and just cut this one short, and then we'll talk later. Okay.